All right, guys, welcome to week four, the final week of Poltergeist Phenomena. Hard to believe that we've whipped through 4 weeks already. Tonight, we're going to talk about investigating the Poltergeist phenomena, and then we have a special guest tonight, Keith Linder from Washington State. Had the pleasure to interview Keith on the Dueling Parapsychologist podcast, 2 episodes, I believe, about his experiences living in a haunted house. So we get to hear firsthand what that's like. So why do we investigate? The number one reason that I always say is to help the client. There's a lot of organizations or groups, ghost hunters, whatever you want to call them, that kind of forget that. And to me, that's the most important thing is, somebody's normally contacting you looking for usually assistance, if not some sort of validation that they're experiencing a phenomena and that they're not crazy. But normally it's they're reaching out because they're looking for help. And again, a lot of people get that. I've heard lots of stories from clients that say, they had a group of investigators show up at their house. They had all kinds of fancy equipment. They walked around, did a bunch of you know, photographs and video and had the fancy equipment going, but at the end they just kind of packed up, left, never heard back from them, which is not good. And usually the clients end up having to call somebody else in to help. And we'll actually hear from Keith's experience as well. He had a few different people come in, some that were not so helpful as well. Uh, we also investigate to gather data and increase our knowledge and understanding of a particular phenomena, in this case, poltergeist, and specifically kind of looking at the recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis phenomena, not one that's associated with an entity. We also go into eliminate normal explanations. A lot of us go in as well to experience the phenomena ourselves. And of course, most paranormal organizations or societies or volunteers, they do it because they have an interest in the paranormal, because it's fun, it's exciting, it's something else, that they do outside of their regular 9 to 5 job. And those are pretty much all, the reasons that we investigate. Now, what does investigating using the scientific method mean? It means accurate observation. So that's conducting your proper witness interviews, conducting proper historical research on the individuals involved or the properties, town, possibly, depending on what you're investigating. Um, Not so much scientific, more subjective, but using psychics. Because if you use a reliable psychic that's been tested, they can provide you with some insights. There's been some cases of poltergeist cases where they brought in a medium and the medium is, they won't pick up that there's a spirit there or anything like that. So then that kind of leads you to believe that the phenomena may be linked to RSPK because they wouldn't be picking up on, another entity there. So you would have to start to reformulate your hypotheses and start looking at, is there a living agent here that's causing this phenomena? Measure and repeatability of the observations are important. Bring your tools, even simple tools like a notepad, pen, tape recorder, measuring tape, a level. You want to go in and assess the environment. And the way I look at it is, normally when somebody contacts me, they say that they have all kinds of phenomena happening. Um, that sounds paranormal in nature. They might say that they're seeing apparitions or hearing noises, things like that. When I go in with an open mind. I don't go in saying that, it's paranormal right off the hop or that it's not. just go in with a very open mind and assess the situation myself. You know, you have to take a look at the state of the house. Is it in disrepair? Could it be animals in the wall causing noises? Um, you know, how old is the house? I live in a 110-year-old house. It's certainly not perfect. Some of the walls are crooked. You can feel, you know, the floor sinks a little bit in some parts of it. So depending on how bad that is, that can cause people to experience certain side effects as well. So you want to go in and you know, you want to assess that situation. Same with even the doors. If the door is always opening up, you know, on its own, check it with a level, you know, see if it's off kilter. Um, I always tell a story about one of the Airbnb places that we investigated. We solved one of three mysteries. The owner had seen a female apparition there, would have muddy boot prints appear in the kitchen no matter how many times she would scrub the floor, they'd always come back. And the third phenomena was that the drape on the back door would always be pushed over to the right. And we set the cameras up overnight. And what we were able to find out was every time the furnace kicked in, it would ever so slightly push that curtain from the far left just slightly to the right. And when you watch it on time lapse, you can see each time the furnace kicks in, it would slowly move over. But if you were just standing there, you wouldn't notice that that was happening. So in that case, you know, we were able to solve one of the client's concerns, but certainly didn't see the apparition or have the footprints show up on us. So it's one of those cases where you'd have to go back another time, and the timing just wasn't right for us to experience anything like that. But on the positive note, we did solve one of the three mysteries. You want to test and collect data. Again, the testing could be running some you know, some scenarios. If somebody says that the door is always opening on its own, then close the door and set up a camera and watch, see what happens. I've seen some doors where the lock mechanism doesn't latch properly, so any sort of air current kicking around the house can open that door. Um, I've seen doors not level. I've seen doors get caught on the floors. I know downstairs when Sarah put our vinyl flooring over the hardwood floor, when you open the French doors, it kind of catches on the floor just a little bit because it's you know, touch too high. So got to look around for all those types of observations and get your baseline readings. You want to find out, you know, what's the average temperature in the house, what's the average electromagnetic field radiation coming from the plugs. Most homes that I've been into, it's been pretty good. Um, there was one that we just did last month here in Sydney where the outlet was giving off 198 milligauss on the EMF reader, which is not normal. The agencies down in the US that say, you know, your typical background radiation for EMF should be under 10 milligauss. Would have chances are there was an ungrounded wire in that outlet, so we did make a recommendation that the electrician come and fix that. Then you want to analyze your data. So go over your data, see if there's any sort of patterns happening. You know, does it happen, you know, only in the evening time? Does it happen, you know, ironically when a train is passing by, you know, a block away, you know, items shaking or falling off the shelf? Do you want to kind of assess all the information that you're collecting and try and determine whether or not there's any patterns? In poltergeist cases, the pattern you want to look for, especially, is there anybody that's associated to the phenomena or seems to be associated to the phenomena, i.e., your living agent. So if John Smith is always home and that's when the activity is happening, and John Smith leaves and no activity happens, um, you know, you can start to kind of narrow down who might possibly be the living agent in that case. Again, doing experiments, we talked about that. Share the results. Sometimes you might have to do a comprehensive report and send it off to either a parapsychologist that you can look up at the Parapsychological Association, or maybe you have contacts and know someone else in the field and you want to just get a second look. Have them go over the results. They might give you some tips on what else you can do. They may be able to assist you depending on what you need. For example, we shared a case with Dr. Jim Horan in Texas because I realized that client that we were dealing with had mental health issues, and I looked for what's called a clinical parapsychologist, and that is an individual that practices psychology or psychiatry, but also has a background in parapsychology. So they can kind of help the client. They understand the phenomena that they're explaining, but they can also help the client. So we ended up sharing our entire case file with Dr. Jim Horan, and they were able to assist the client. And then look at your testing and modify your hypothesis if you have to. You know, is the house haunted? Is it natural phenomena? Is it a poltergeist case involving a living agent, or is it a mixed bag case where it could be a spirit and also recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis? Because there are some mixed bag cases for sure. A lot of the same normal explanations for hauntings also apply for poltergeists as well. Low frequency sound, magnetic fields, static electricity, environmental conditions, physical issues with the building, sleep paralysis, especially the hypnopompic state when you're waking up. If you wake up too fast, it might be a bit of a blend between your dream state and reality. So you may see stuff or experience stuff. Mistaken perceptions and conclusions, obviously, that can happen to anybody, especially if you are living in a haunted environment for an extended period of time. Almost anything that happens, you could almost almost like a form of post-traumatic stress or shell shock. Anytime that you hear something, you might attribute that to the supernatural, but maybe in that particular case, it was just a board shifting or um, a bang or a noise in the environment. Medical conditions, specifically, psychological conditions, broken electronics, obviously, house settling noises, animals, gases, water sources, carbon monoxide, all normal explanations that you can kind of look at and try and rule out, see that that's not causing the poltergeist phenomena. I always tell the story about Lloyd Auerbach's house in California there, where he had a client contact him. They said that they would see glowing balls of light float through the air, and then it would hit the couch or the wall, and it would catch fire. And what was happening is the house was built on a dump, and there was methane gas coming up through the ground. And it was also very dry, humid, very dry, static electricity kind of neighborhood. And what would happen is the methane gas would light up from the static electricity and then would cause these spontaneous fires to break out. Also inside the house too, there was underground water source, which was causing one of the rooms to be a lot colder than the rest of the house. So um, again, that's why it's important to kind of go in with an open mind and investigate everything. Now, your initial assessment and the case acceptance. So normally, like I said, you get contacted by somebody asking for help. You have to start screening the email, assuming it's an email or a phone call. Evaluate the credibility of the report, what type of activity is being reported. Is it active? Because poltergeist cases, normally it is active right now. It's unlike a haunting where it's like, the odd time they see an apparition throughout the week. Usually a poltergeist case, the ones um, that are happening, it's happening like right away, and they're usually calling somebody for fairly quick response. Not like your hauntings where you take a couple weeks to do your research. This is probably one of those ones where you hop in the car and start heading towards the place to investigate once you get as much detail as possible. Certainly when you talk to them, sometimes through email, but a lot of times in person, you can detect whether or not there's any mental health issues. You can also kind of cover off some normal explanations. It depends on what they're telling you. Are they seeing a book levitate off of a shelf, or are they just hearing, scratches and bangs coming from the wall? And then, of course, you can also assess for fraud, trickery, or a hoax, which is not really that common. Again, you know, it's it's kind of good. It's not completely gone. I mean, like obviously you always have to be concerned, but it's a little bit gone to the wayside. It's not as common as you would think to have somebody try and trick you or fraud or do a hoax. Um, I would say if you're going to get a hoax these days, it's probably going to be through video or audio or something that AI can manipulate. It'll be a piece of evidence. I also find people aren't serious when they contact you and you start following up and asking questions and wanting to meet them on, in person for an interview and stuff like that. They'll just kind of disappear. And even then, it's not always a fraud or a hoax. We had one house contact us up in Spryfield. Sounded like it was, fairly active, nothing too crazy. They weren't saying that the walls were bleeding or anything like that, but um, they were having activity. And then, of course, we made some arrangements to conduct a Zoom in-person interview, and they weren't keeping their appointments. And then all of a sudden, they just kind of stopped responding. So again, it kind of lends to the credibility. If they can't show up on time for the meeting, then it's not a very good start to the credibility. Now, your preliminary interview, again, you want to conduct that hopefully in person, but depends on where you're getting contacted from. You might have to do it via Zoom because you want to, at best, have video and audio. Worst case scenario, just audio, but really try and get that video in there. And you want to ask some questions about the phenomena, what type of environment they live in, all those people involved. The interview should be recorded so that you have that documented, and you might need to go back and rewatch it again. I know even in my experience as a police officer, when I've interviewed individuals, especially suspects, we always had somebody monitoring the statement. And that's because one, you might forget to ask certain questions because you've got a million different things going through your mind when you're in that interview room, and you might forget to ask a certain question, or you might miss something because as the person speaking, you're kind of preparing your next question. So they might say something that's important that you actually might have missed. So it's always good to have it recorded and listen to it again. I usually record it and then I type out a synopsis in my investigator's report, and then I send it out to my team and I ask for feedback. Um, Doing an in-person or video interview as well helps you observe nonverbal information. A lot of times people will give off nonverbal cues, and that might help you decide could help with the credibility of the case, or you might notice maybe there's some family dynamics going on. Maybe the wife, for example, kind of believes that the house is haunted or something's going on, but the husband's doesn't. doesn't think anything's going on, and he seems to kind of dismiss the wife's claims. That it's important information for you to collect. It helps you look for patterns as well. And again, that's trying to find out when the activity is occurring. If it's a poltergeist case, it's probably happening, right now. Um, or if not, very, very frequently. So it kind of gives you an idea on, when to hit the road and get out there. Look for any inconsistencies in the story. Look for family and cultural influences, also religious influences as well. You'll notice, when you're dealing with demonic cases, a lot of those come in from people with a Christian background, things like that. Uh, Look for any sort of deception. And then, of course, when you're talking to the individuals, you can screen for mental illness. Ask questions, especially in poltergeist cases, about any recent traumatic events or psychological or emotional turmoil, if you're looking at the RSPK theory, um, because that will help you possibly identify the living agent. Because in RSPK cases, there's often a person or multiple people, usually just one, that's considered the focus or the living agent around where the activity centralizes. And you can identify this person through patterns after you do your interviews, and pick up on anything. Did anything traumatic recently happen? Psychological assessment. Consider recommending a psychological evaluation for the living agent to help them understand their emotional and mental state. You can do that a little bit further into the investigation, but I do have it listed here twice because it is important, and you'll find out why here in just a little bit. So your on-site investigation, you arrive at the house, you do your initial walkthrough, document the physical layout, note any areas of interest. Sometimes people will say the activity is focused in the kitchen or the living room. Use that time to observe any immediate activity that may be occurring while you're there. Get somebody on your team to take the environmental baseline readings. So you want to see what the EMF readings are while the activity's occurring, while it's not occurring. Same with the temperature, humidity, any other tools that you might have, just to kind of help you establish a baseline, because you don't know, maybe when the activity's occurring, the EMF radiation readings are higher. You can do some more witness interviews while you're there. If you have to do some follow-up questions, this is your time to do it. Try and get them separate and interview them on their own, so that they're not trying to influence each other's statements. You can also help gauge their emotional responses to your questions. Start setting up your equipment, audio, video, especially in the active areas. Start keeping a log of all the events that are occurring, the time, the location, the date, who's present, and what type of activity is occurring. Start to recognize any sort of patterns with the log data. We talked about that, the time of day or certain individuals present, any emotional states going on. So is somebody kind of wound up really tight, or are they really upset? And that seems to be when the activity's happening. Again, that can kind of help you identify who the living agent might be. Cross verification, I put this only if you're not staying on site. So with cross verification, you can use audio and video and the environmental data to verify the witness's accounts. So sometimes I have left recording equipment at clients' homes. And so if they say, there was some activity happening in the kitchen there last night, I can go back and I can review the videotape and say, oh, yeah, we heard a couple bangs there on the tape. But if you're in a poltergeist case that's active, a lot of times investigators will try and stay with the family to kind of work through it and investigate it and be there firsthand when all this activity is occurring. It's not so much like a haunting case. You want to start coming up with a hypothesis by this point. Is there a living agent involved? Do you think it might be, could it be the survival hypothesis where a spirit's involved? Start doing some controlled experiments, you know, um, check the walls if there's banging and rapping going on in certain areas. Um, this is your time to kind of set things up and test test your theories. You can try and replicate things as well. So, for example, if items are flying off the shelf, you can see, is it reasonable that a human hand could have thrown that, or is it just too far? There's been poltergeist cases where fridges have been, thrown across the room kind of thing, and maybe you've got a 12-year-old girl involved, and you know, two men can't even move that fridge full, let alone a 12-year-old girl kind of thing. So you want to take a look at what's happening in the phenomena and try and do as much replication as possible, keeping in mind that it's ethical and safe to do so. If you do come across some psychological or environmental issues, you'll want to offer counseling and support, especially if a living agent is identified. You'll want to highly recommend that they get some psychological support. And you can also recommend that they change their environment or routine that might help alleviate some of the phenomena because they might actually be getting triggered by something in the environment, and that subconscious stress is now acting out as the poltergeist activity. So sometimes changing things up or removing a trigger can help and the phenomena can go away. And also counseling, working through that underlying trauma and emotional psychological turmoil can also sometimes help the phenomena go away. Documentation is really important. You want to compile a comprehensive report detailing all your findings, any analysis that you've done, any recommendations that you've made to the family, and whether or not they're abiding by it, because that'll show you, how serious they are about, trying to resolve the issue as well. It's no good if you're making, smart recommendations such as, seeking counseling and they have full medical plan and they're not accessing it, or they don't think that they should follow your advice. Then um, sometimes in cases like that, then the activity just doesn't stop, and there's no way to uh, guarantee that you can make the phenomena stop. Same as a haunting, it's the same, with a poltergeist case. You can't guarantee someone that you're going to come into their house and make the poltergeist phenomena stop. Peer review, we talked a little bit about that during the scientific method. So you can have some colleagues or some, contact somebody from the Parapsychological Association to review your work and give you any sort of feedback or validation. They might have some further suggestions if the activity hasn't ceased by then. And then important is to continue following up. You want to offer your continued support and monitor all the individuals that are involved, because they're your clients, and also assess the effectiveness of any interventions or adjust them as necessary. The majority of poltergeist cases do tend to resolve over time by themselves. Um, and when I say by themselves, I mean with it being brought to their attention on what's occurring. And there's usually not a need for any sort of dramatic intervention. So a lot of times when you go there, if you identify who the living agent is, you can talk to them about what RSPK is, offer the suggestion about going to counseling or therapy, because that'll help them deal with some undergoing stress, trauma, emotional turmoil that can start to be alleviated, which if you're dealing with RSPK, then the phenomena will start to decrease. Again, we did talk about residual effects as well, so it might not necessarily stop immediately, but you should start to notice a difference if it is again RSPK. Um, the phenomena usually has a peak period, and it will gradually decrease. And if it's not resolved, then you'll see that it picks back up again. So you'll have a very busy time, and there'll kind of be a little bit of a quiet period, and then it'll pick back up again. It's almost like a cycle. And you want to provide psychological and emotional support to the living agent because that's going to be crucial in helping get the phenomena to stop. And it might require some environmental changes like we talked about. So changing up their environment or their routine um, can certainly help. Maybe there's a trigger, if uh I'm just trying to think, like say the Esther Cox case, for example, where she was sexually assaulted by her boyfriend, if there's any items in her bedroom that remind her of the boyfriend, you might want to get rid of those. Anything that would be, considered a trigger. Resolution of underlying issues. So if the phenomena is linked to interpersonal dynamics or specific stressors in the household, addressing those issues can often lead to a resolution. Sometimes families are very dysfunctional and they may require some family counseling. Might also be some conflict resolution that needs to happen, especially if you're dealing with a teenager, adolescents, which a lot of poltergeist cases tend to happen around. And they just don't have those coping mechanisms. So there might be some conflict, occurring between them and their family members, and you might have to, kind of do a informal conflict resolution, or if it's really bad, then that would be where the family counseling comes into play, and they can do a formal conflict resolution, and then dealing with their specific stress factors. A decrease in attention, which also applies for hauntings as well. We often tell clients to try and encourage them going about their normal routine, discourage them from focusing on the activity, which can be helpful. If there's continuous focus, then that can create fear, and then that can unintentionally keep fueling the phenomena, especially in RSPK cases. And that's definitely one recommendation that you should make to your clients is to try and reduce the amount of time that they're spending on focusing on the phenomena, and that can sometimes help. And that's pretty much a summary of the investigations and how they differ from hauntings. So basically, in summary, if you're dealing with from a RSPK kind of side of things, then you want to identify that living agent, find out what the trauma, psychological, or emotional turmoil is, and help them try and resolve it. And again, there's no shame in contracting out or getting somebody else to help you with that. I know, like, for example, I'm not a registered counselor. So, I nor would I try to, offer them counseling services. That would be something that is beyond my expertise, and I would have to recommend that, they go see a professional. And there's nothing wrong with that. They called you because paranormal phenomena is happening, and they want you to help them. And that is one method that you can help them. So I'm just going to switch slides and go back to week 2 case studies because I did up some slides for Keith. And I'll pull those up here in a sec. Let's see. Been a while since I heard your story, Keith, but I think yours might be a bit of a mixed bag case because I know there's that really cool EVP that the investigators got with a female voice on it, and there was no females in the house, which is not typical of a RSPK living agent poltergeist case. Let's see. All right, Keith, go ahead and take her away.
Okie dokie. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
All right, sounds good. Uh, Thanks for having me. Once again, everyone, my name is Keith Linder. I reside in Seattle, Washington, or I should say a suburb of Seattle, Washington. Um, a name you're going to hear throughout me talking is the word Bothell. Bothell is a small suburban community outside the Seattle, Washington area. In Washington State, not Washington, D.C., just FYI. Um, yeah, let's go with the next slide. My background, just to give everybody familiarity with who I am, I'm an IT project manager. I moved to the Seattle greater area. Uh, 2005 is when I moved, but I did not move to the Bothell house until May of 2012. Uh, Me and my girlfriend at the time, who had already been dating, we met April 15th, 2010, so 2 years before the phenomena began. And something that I think is pertinent to the case, because I get asked this question a lot. Um, we had two separate households at the time, or apartments, I might say. We were not living together until we moved in the Bothell house. Um, I did not or was not having activity at my current place of residence. Neither was Tina. Um, Neither one of us have children. Neither one of us have pets. The home in question, interesting enough, was built the same year I moved to Seattle, 2005. The exact month I don't know, but the house in the neighborhood it was in was built in 2005. So as you can see in the picture, this is a single dwelling, two-story unit. Um, Primarily, neighbors like myself are all in similar backgrounds of dealing with tech, healthcare, um, um, sales and marketing. Just generally the gist of the neighbors that I talk to as far as the occupation. This is a sort of middle class, upper middle class neighborhood. Um, Age range from 35 to 60, me being in my mid 50s, I mean, mid 40s, early 40s at the time of moving in. If you want to know more about this case in great detail, not try to just plug my book, but I tell everybody the book, The Bothell Hell House, um, should be required reading for those who want to understand the phenomena from the house occupant's point of view. There's very few material out there about Poltergeist from the house occupant's point of view, and rightfully so. Most house occupants want to forget the ordeal, forget the experience, want nothing to do with it, let alone relive it in writing a book. I associate me, however, being the going against the rule in the sense of my IT background as a project manager, going back to what Elliot was saying earlier. I had done extensive documentation of the phenomena that was happening around us, which the paranormal investigators loved and appreciated. Rarely are the house occupants that proactive unless asked, but I already begun that process of uh, keeping meticulous notes, diary, video, audio, what time this happened, what day of the week it was, what was the condition of the house, what was the condition of us. Um, and the investigators, some good, some bad, all found that very useful. Next slide. Let's see here. So Tina and myself, once again, had not had activity before moving into the house, but we did begin experiencing activity almost on day one. You can actually say day one. By day one, I mean the day we went to pick up the keys, sign the leasing papers. We were renters, not owners. That's very important. The homeowner, we met the homeowner there. We signed the 2-year lease agreement. Um, After touring the house months prior, we fell in love with it and moved in 2 months afterwards, which was May. And the first thing that we noticed on day one was a mysterious kid cough. Now, the interesting thing about kid cough, once again, is neither one of us have children or pets. Um, we were sitting on the floor, sort of getting a feel and lay of the house like most couples do, of what goes where we're going to put this, where we're going to put that, whose room is whose, and whatnot. And in the middle of our conversation, we heard a kid cough. It was very genuine in the sense of I looked at Tina, she looked at me, and we asked each other the same question. Was that a kid cough? I describe it in that detail because that's exactly how it happened, but it also explains um, we didn't put the answer in each other's mouth. It was very distinct, this being a kid cough. It sounded like it was coming from one of the upstairs bedrooms. So that's the direction that we heard it. There are 4 bedrooms upstairs, 2.5 bathroom home unit. But once again, we had no familiarity with the paranormal, so neither one of us was screaming ghost. We're about 2 years from understanding what a poltergeist is, so we just thought that had to have come from outside. So, as the human mind typically does, shrugs it off, and we forgot about it. Um, a few days and a few weeks later, after that, 2 things started happening. Number one, uh, items started missing. I had a extra set of car key or car fob, more so than car keys. Nobody has car keys anymore, but a car fob, and it was a set that I had never used. It was a spare, and I noticed it was missing. And I had blamed myself as to saying I must have lost it during the moving process. But even though that did not make sense to me, because it was in a box and was never used. At the same time, Tina is reporting to me of missing jewelry. Once again, this is jewelry that I, being her boyfriend, are not too familiar with, let alone go rummaging through. But she's finding a missing earring, missing bracelet, rings, family heirlooms. But we're not connecting the dots yet. We're still moving in. We're still getting acclimated. Um, a few weeks after that, we're both home, watching a movie, sitting side by side on the couch. It's a normal weekday. And as we're watching the movie, I think it was on Netflix, Tina has a 4 foot tall plant. It's an artificial plant, not real, but it was sitting by the entertainment center to the right. And all of a sudden, the plant, I don't like to say levitate because levitate implies slowly moving upward. No, this plant darted up. Okay. Um, it darted up a few inches off the ground. It left the ground and did a 360 spin and then fell over in our direction. Now, we're sitting shoulder to shoulder. So, once again, we saw it at the same time and we leaped up from the couch. Now, we at that time, after seeing the plant levitate or dart up, thought that we were being pranked. This was a moment of we were like, okay, this has to be some sort of welcome to the neighborhood, or reality TV was real big, if you notice, in the mid 2000s. So around 2012, shows like Big Brother and whatnot, Survivor and all this stuff, these gotcha TV shows where the house occupants move in and total unaware. But so we were expecting, confetti, balloons, and people to pop out of closets and say, ha ha ha, we got you. But when we start rummaging through the plant, looking for some sort of remote control device, some sort of electrical equipment, even though I don't know what could make a plant do that, um, some sort of visible wire. We soon began to realize that none of that stuff is happening. So we fell back to the kid cough a couple of weeks prior, and we were still unsure. And what we did, or what I did, was, we went to my office, which is upstairs, and Googled, how can you tell your house is haunted? I mean, I'm an IT professional, so I don't know these things, but the internet seems to have the answers to stuff. So And the web pages we found, paranormal web pages, all of them seem to have the top 5, the top 10 list, pretty accurate of how can you tell your house is haunted. And we had already had about 5 of those instances. Missing objects. Um, One page even had the kid cough, children noises, finding objects that neither one of you own. We started finding kid toys um, that neither one of us own. Once again, we don't have kids. Um, the kitchen cabinet door phenomena, meaning all your cupboards in your kitchen are open. You wake up in the morning, you come down for a cup of coffee, you make a cup of coffee, and every kitchen cabinet door is wide open. Phantom footsteps. So we came to the conclusion that we had a kid ghost. And at that time, not scared because the websites that we said was, if it's a kid ghost, this is what you want to do. This happens not often, but it happens. You want to be nice. You want to take on a parental role. You want to talk gingerly to it and ask it um, to go into the light. Even though me and Tina never knew what light specifically, but this is what we're being advised on websites. So, okay, um, kindly go into the light, be at peace, and that's when things start to change. I tell people now, and I tell people in my book, um, once that acknowledgement came, or acceptance, if you will, um, things began to take on a malevolent tone. And as you can see in the last bullet point, um, that's when we started having the door slams, and that's when we start having the flying plants, flying pottery. Okay, so just a quick imagine you're having dinner, with your significant other, and a plant zooms across your peripheral, and you hear the crash, and you respond to the crash, and it's your plant that was once sitting over here, now resting over here. It has impacted or obliterated upon impact on a wall. It's in pieces on the ground. Other plants that did not obliterate upon impact, Tina or I kindly set them up, put them back on their pedestal or pillar or shelf, only to see these plants fly in the air again. Always through peripheral, never directly, but I can tell you the noise is loud and the sizes of the pottery begins to vary. Uh, Next slide, please. Yeah, so floating objects. Now we can sort of talk about the levitations. We lived it, we saw it. Um, One thing I like to reiterate is, and I'm pretty sure y'all saw this with the Poltergeist cases that this class was showing in the weeks prior, is there is a snowball effect related to Poltergeist activity that we witnessed and experienced. Things do begin slow and slowly but surely escalate. Um, there's definitely a bell curve associated with the activity of up and down. It varies depending on the case. We're now, me and Tina, midway through summer of 2012. Plants are flying at will. Um, and we, at that time, are calling or researching the local churches in the area to quiet the activity, because the advice given up until now was these things will die down on their own. And there's some truth there. There's some truth to that. However, there's always going to be outliners, and the Bothell Hill House case is an outliner in that we're a long way from our activity dying down. From beginning to end, this activity that we experienced was 3 years. The majority was summer of 2014. We're just now in 2012. What you see on this slide are some of the things, or the manifestations that took place over a period of 2.5 years. And y'all can ask me about those questions of the spontaneous fires. That was spring, summer of 2014. 3 Bibles did catch fire. That's what you see. One there is Bible number 2 that was in that condition, or was found in that condition. within seconds of me walking past it. The one to the right is a poster, Final Fantasy poster in my office that caught fire. I was taking a shower. Tina was going to work. Tina had left the house minutes prior. Kissed me goodbye. We had a lot of activity the night before, a lot of activity, loud banging, flying objects knocked over. Um, I was in the shower when the fire alarm went off. Um, that's a crazy experience on any level, let alone with a poltergeist. Um, when I responded to my office, this poster, as you can see here, was on fire. There were flames. I doused it to fire. I called 911. Long story short, the fire department did respond. Their report, not mine, their report, official report is they could not determine root cause of the fire. Posters on walls don't catch fire. Typically, there was no heating agent, there was no accelerant. The fire marshal came to my house twice to do an investigation. They could not find an official report was no root cause. They found it interesting, and they found it lucky. Lucky that number one, I didn't burn down or the house didn't burn down. Um, Other poltergeist cases talk about wall writings. We had our own share of wall writings. Um, the wall writings, I can say, could be broken down to two categories. One being the religious wall writing, as you can see on the right, the 666. And then one on the left is the symbols, which this is a Native American symbol. It took a while to discern what that was. This is the upside down man or upside down stick figure. Um, those familiar, well, you guys know more than me, but are like me, North America, uh, Native Americans in Seattle or in Washington, uh, were frequent or roamed here frequently. The land Bothell is located. We have what is called three tribes going back in the 1800s, early 1800s, late 1700s. Um, so these wall writings were very interesting, but most important than the wall writings themselves was the substance used to write, the black oil that you see there. Other things that we had that were always trying, it's like a cat chasing its tail, was just the phantom noises. I mean, there were times when I was in my office and I would hear my name called in the hallway, Keith. And I would go looking for Tina, thinking she's calling me. And when I get to Tina, Tina's like, I didn't call you. And the noise was real. A voice sounded like Tina. Um, there were times when Tina come looking for me, and I'm like, "What do you want?" And she said, "Didn't you call me?" I remember one time Tina was taking a nap on the couch downstairs. I was in my office upstairs, and she comes running up the stairs to me, just running, and I'm like, "What? What happened?" She said, "Something whispered in her ear my name, Keith." She heard it, and so that was weird. And that happened to me a lot of times. Occasionally, it still does, even though I don't live in a Bothell house anymore. We'll talk about the apparitions. I did on several occasions did see what y'all describe as an apparition. There was one I refer to as the Gray Lady. I know it seems cliche. Everybody seems to have a Gray Lady story, but hey, it is true. I was in my office, and this was once again late spring, early summer 2014. And I heard a click. When I heard the click, the lights in my room went off. And we all know if you turn your light switch off, you hear that clicking sound. So then that's what I heard. I turned to the direction of the light panel, which the light switch is by the door. And when I turned toward the direction of the door of the sound, there was a lady standing there, not Tina. We'll talk about her in a second. A lady was standing in the doorway, but she was 100% gray. And I always tell people she was gray. She was matte colored gray. Think about an egg carton, that color, the color of an egg carton, grocery store, carton of eggs. Um, and when I turned toward her, She turned toward her side and she tried to dart, if you will, into the room to the left of me, which is the washroom, laundry room. I don't know what I'm seeing. We're talking nanoseconds here. But she could not go through the door. The door was closed, but she was trying to go through the door. Um, Not go through it, like open it and go through it. No, she was trying to go through the door, but she couldn't. And then she turned her back to me and darted down the hallway and turned the corner. I, not knowing what I'm looking at, I'm in more shock, more instinct than anything. Give chase. And of course, when I turn the corner, poof, she's gone. I kept on walking and ended up in our master bedroom because I got to tell Tina, I got to tell Tina, and also in my brain, I got to rule out Tina. But I get to the bathroom and Tina is taking a bath. Tina is chin deep in bubble bath. This is her time of night when she takes bubble bath. So I walk in, to use a cliche, like you just saw a ghost. I did, and she's looking at me like, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, "I saw it." And she's like, "You saw what?" And I said, "No, I saw it." Because keep in mind, um, this was summer of 2012. And up until then, we had not had a face that me and Tina could put to the phenomena. We've had disappearing objects, objects thrown, electrical issues of lights going off and on at will, kitchen cabinet doors, phantom footsteps. And now we have something physical manifestation, and meaning that I saw a woman other than Tina standing in my door who turned off a light and disappeared. So that was interesting. Um, Also associated with just a presence of always being watched, always being observed. Some nights were worse than others. I say in my book, Sunday night, for whatever reason, I still don't know to this day. Sunday nights around 8 p.m. Pacific time till about 5 a.m. Pacific time, the house had a heaviness, an uneasy. Was Sunday the most active day or night in the house? No. Was it the most where you felt like you were being watched? Yes. Did we have activity? Uh, yes. The first Bible, not shown on this slide, but in the book, the first Bible to catch fire was on a Sunday night. Next slide, please. So this is a continuation of the wall writings, and when I say wall writings, we had numerous wall writing campaigns. I know other Portuguese have their own case to tell or story to tell in regards to the wall writings. Once again, these are different symbols than you saw before. So this is me erasing the wall writing by erasing painting over, um, working with paranormal teams, mainly churches, the Catholic Church, of being advised to remove immediately these symbols for fear that the spirit might take a holding of your house or environment or whatever. Um, so we did, I did. And as you can see, um, all they did was do it again. All right. And as they wrote more on the walls, and every time they did write was in my office. Uh, every time they wrote, it was harder to remove the substance. The substance became harder to move because the substance they used began changing. The first wall writings involved sage ash or ash that could easily be removed with hot, warm water and soap. Uh, it soon became pencil, wall writings with pencil. Uh, Never a Sharpie or never the markers or pencils I had in my office in my cup. So I don't know where these objects came from. The third slide from going from left to right at the top is the words die KL. My name is Keith Linder. There were several writings or notes left in the house um, specific to me. My initials of die KL, I can tell you that's very discerning. When a spirit starts going by your initials or calling you by your first name, let alone the word die. But this was appearing not only inside the Bothell house, This was appearing outside the Bothell house in the lawn. This was appearing inside my car of oil-like substance on the dashboard, steering wheel, both passenger and driver's side floor, both ceiling, passenger side, driver's side. Once again, to debunk those who say, well, it's hoax, it's fake. This is considerable monetary damage to car furniture. I don't know what human being, hoaxer or faker, would take it upon themselves, let alone write the words DIKL on every upholstery in a car with some sort of black oil like paint. It is almost impossible to remove. And a neighbor walking their dog one morning, seeing this throughout your car, yeah, you get onlookers. It gets weird. Um, but this happened, and it became I ain't gonna say a daily routine, but there was a campaign where this was happening daily. But this became a weekly routine. Some of what you see here are what the wall writings look like under a microscope. This is done by using digital microscope, magnifying the substance 12 to 1500 times the magnification um, of what this is. And once again, the upside down man. Upon Google search and upon checking with the local Native Americans in the area and checking on the internet, um, the upside down man, and this is easily verifiable. Um, you can't make this stuff up. Uh, it means a man has died. It means a man has died or a man is about to die. The Native Americans would only draw this symbol if a man was had died either by murder or by smallpox or a disease. Through research of Bothell, through research of Washington, through research of the Pacific Northwest region, I was able to determine that yes, there were cases of smallpox outbreaks through the Pacific Northwest, once again through the 1800s. I think the totality, if you include Vancouver, by Vancouver I mean Canada, up until the northern Pacific Northwest, up until Northern California, close to 1.5 million Native Americans died one winter alone due to smallpox. For Bothell specifically, over 500 Native Americans on record, died as a result of smallpox in the immediate Bothell area in the 1800s, where Native Americans were purposely not given the smallpox vaccine. Next slide. I think this is just a slide. I don't know if it's audio here, but
Yeah, these are sometimes I have difficulty playing it. I just want to see if I have it in the folder, Keith. Just give me one sec.
sure.
Uh Usually what I have to do is email it to students there, but just give me a sec here. 'Cause yeah, I think I might have them here. So let me try this. Let's see. So I will share this. Let me know if you can hear it, Keith. Could you hear anything?
No, I can't hear it, but I know the EVP you're referring to, though.
Let me
This is
just
the
try it.
female voice.
Let me try it one more time. I'm gonna take out my headphones. One sec. Uh, were you able to hear any of that?
I could not now.
Okay. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna email those two clips to the to all the students, or I'll upload them to the course Moodle.
Okay.
I gotta figure out how to friggin' get that to work on my PowerPoint slides. They never seem to work for me. But I'll make sure I upload them. But yeah, those were the two EVPs that you caught. I won't tell them what it is, so I'm just gonna skip ahead. I hate when people tell you that because then that's all you can hear. So just let me skip ahead. Okay, there we go. All right, and all right, let's go back to share screen. All right, there we go.
Yeah, so I mean, we contacted a lot of paranormal. It's sort of like the snowball effect with the phenomena. It's also the snowball effect with the researchers, um, especially if it's for individuals like myself and Tina who have no knowledge of the paranormal. Um, you're really throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks, no pun intended, um, about what teams are out there. So the, I guess the plus and negative or pros and cons about paranormal teams is you could be doing more harm than good if you get the wrong paranormal team in there. If you get the ghost hunter in there, the thrill seeker, um, they can make your environment a living hell. And that's I've seen that familiar theme with people I've talked to who had similar phenomena outbreaks. And I don't know if there's a way around that because when you're having this level of activity, and we even scratched the surface on the activity, the house occupant like me and Tina, we just want the phenomena to stop, okay? To lessen. It's a beautiful home, make it go away. Uh, and like everything else on the internet, there's more bad than good in the sense of there's no vetting, there's no Yelp, there's no Project Blue Book, there's no reference, there's nothing. So when you find a web page and you'll take the first person or team that says, yeah, we can come out there. There's no reference check, right? I mean, how can you reference check a poltergeist case if they're so far few in between? But in any event, this is the process that you typically have to go through, sad but true. And we did. There was no way around it. Our phenomena started once again in the summer of May 2012. Uh, it would take 3 years for a bona fide team, 2015, 2016, to reach the Bothell house. So there is a trial by fire. Um, the picture that you see to the right, regrettably, Zach Baggins of Ghost Adventures. Uh, Caught wind of our case. We didn't find him; they found us. Um, and this is just the nature of the beast, if you will. The ghost hunter paranormal shows are going to find for whatever case, be it true or not true, are going to find the cases first. And that's how Zach found us is through the local media that reported the case. Dave Schrader at the time, who was their chief researcher, knew the media outlets in the Seattle greater area. So he was on speed dial through the reporter and like I said, there's videos out there on the internet. It's in my book. And so they reached out to Dave Schrader, who reached out to Zach. And those who are familiar with the episode, the rest is history. Um, um, then there's other paranormal teams. As you can see here, Don Phillips from the United States, from the United Kingdom, parapsychologist Steve Mera, uh, other parapsychologist Nick Kyle, uh, out of the out of Scotland. These individuals, uh, I contacted, and how I contacted them through 2015 was at that time I just dug deep it down and started reading books myself, and those names were popping up, mainly Steve Mera and Nick Kyle. Steve Mera primarily. Um, there's going to be a lot of interviews with him, and the word poltergeist associated with it. Uh, we did a lot of interviews. Going back to your PowerPoint, Elliot, they put me through about a 2.5 months questionnaire. It was not, hey, I got a poltergeist. Okay, we'll be right over. No, there was a vetting of 2.5 months of question, of live interview, of video chat. And me being on the receiving end of the activity, you sort of irritated at answering questions over and over. But I later understood the method to their madness of what they were doing. They were filtering me. They were trying to make sure my story was concise, that it was not changing, that was not altering it. And once they made that determination, they came over. Coming from the UK to Seattle is a long journey,
Yeah,
but they
exactly.
did. Um, and they did something that Zach Baggins did not do, which was live in the home. Zach Baggins, I tell people, was only in the house 5 hours. Um, that's nothing in regards to a haunted investigation, unless you're coming back several days after. But Steve Merritt, to his credit, to his team's credit, the first time they came there, I believe they stayed 8 days. 8 days. The second time they came, which was April of 2016, the first time was January 2016. They brought Nick Kyle, and then they made a point of staying 7 more days, the three of them, Steve Merritt, Don Phillips, Nick Kyle. Another team in the United States who doesn't get credit for, but was Nikki Novell. Nikki Novell reigns out of Connecticut area and Massachusetts area on the East Coast. Her team, paranormal team, set up remote monitoring. Being on the East Coast, wanted to first remote monitor, and by that do a 24 by 5 or 24/7 video surveillance of the house, with my approval, of course, before trekking 3,000 miles to the East Coast to the West Coast. But once again, to their credit, this video monitoring lasted 8 months from beginning to end. And they got a lot of data, a lot. Keep in mind, they're monitoring the house where I'm home and when I'm not at home. I travel on business. They were monitoring the home while the house was empty, which a lot of paranormal teams love, rightfully so, and got a lot of data. I mean, alarms going off when the house is empty. You know it's empty because I'm texting you and calling you. I'm out the state. I'm out the city. The house is empty. But when they finally did physically come to the home, and every researcher should eventually make his or her way to the home, 3.5 weeks they stayed from beginning to end. Okay, so if you when you Google me after this and do more research on me and the case or whatever, I hope you do a comparison and watch the Ghost Adventures episode, Demons in Seattle, for humor's sake. But more importantly, then watch the uh, documentary that Steve Mera, Nick Kyle, and Don Phillips put together. It's about an hour and a half, and that's free on YouTube. It's called Demons in Seattle Uncovered. It is the antithesis to the Demons in Seattle episode. It's showing you there's a wrong way and a right way, and you'll be the judge. It's almost self-apparent within 5 seconds who's going to get results and who isn't. And then Nikki's information or their investigation are also in my book as references as well. I will tell you, upon their first visit, Nick Kyle, well, Steve Mera and Don came first. Nick Kyle came second. Upon their first visit, Steve Mera captured over 424 EVPs. These were the ones they considered Class B and Class A. The ones they considered Class C or below, they never even published. Not saying they aren't legit or have some unexplained aspect associated with them. Those are just the ones they felt are not public ready, or the public has a tendency to, go after low-hanging fruit, and why give them that ammunition of publishing, Class C or below EVPs. But the Class B and the Class A EVPs, they stand by. I stand by. You can stand by those who will listen to them. I hope you listen to them. I mean, male, female, older male, female, younger male, female voice, kid voices, you name it. A majority of the EVPs were of Irish accent. We later learned Irish. Bothell had a huge Irish population back once again in the 1800s. So that seems to be uncanny. And then on the second visit, when they brought Nick Kyle from the SSPR, it was 274 EVPs. Less than before, but let alone, I've talked to a lot of research to know that's a lot of EVPs. And I don't mean the stuff you see on TV, what, yeah, one phrase sentences. If you ask 5 people, you get 10 different answers. No, these are EVPs where one male voice is talking to another male voice and vice versa, or one male voice is asking a question to another unexplained male voice. And you can rule out Don and Steve and Nick, myself, immediately upon listening to the video to know it's not our video, it's not our contamination, but teachers on there. Let's see here. I just want to make sure. Okay. So yeah, after the paranormal teams did conduct their investigation, by that I mean Nick Kyle, who led the UK, and Nikki Novell, who led the US team. I felt an ample time to move out. I felt our claims were substantiated in great detail. But 4 years from start to finish, you know, it did take a toll on our relationship. One of the downsides to poltergeist infestation. It takes a toll on the house occupants. Um, we came into the house 2 years already together, but the haunting broke us up. It was stress upon stress upon stress, but not so much the activity, but also the level of attacks. Once claims go public, um, there's a level of trolling, there's a level of accusing the parties of making things up, of faking it. Um, the poltergeist seems to be on the side of, oh, you're going to bring teams in here, then we'll just be quiet. And the teams will leave, and then we'll resume. Um, Steve, through his methodology, had a methodology of how to crack that, to his credit. Nikki did too, to a degree. Ghost Adventures, well, it's Ghost Adventures, but they could not. So yeah, that's all I got.
That's great, Keith. I know you had the substance found on the walls analyzed. What did that come back as when you had it analyzed?
Yes, that's a good question. I had the substance analyzed. It was came back as determined to be of a black bone char like material. And what bone black and bone char is it's incinerated buffalo or bison bone. And how they was able to determine that is they used what is called an XRF XRD gun. Uh, if you look at it, it looks like something straight out of a Star Wars or Star Trek movie, the gun itself, but it's used to test the materials in metal, primarily paint. And it's very accurate. It's very scientific. I mean, it's a scientific thing, I guess, equipment, but it's very expensive. You cannot walk into a hardware store and say, "Can I have an XRF gun?" Trust me, I tried. The gun itself costs between $15,000 to $45,000.
Wow.
So but it is right on the dot as far as pinpoint accuracy. And so it pulled out the elements of the black oil, and we or myself shopped that around to multiple museums, 5 to be specific. Um, we didn't tell them where it came from or what it was. I wanted a genuine analysis. But based on the ingredients of the black oil, they all pretty much concluded of bone black. They found phosphorus. Nothing man-made was it. It was all organic material, phosphorus and other calcium deposits. And down to the percentage level to where they were pretty much basically saying, yeah, this is a form of black bone char. And once again, if you study or Google bone black and bone char, you'll see that it's one of the oldest forms of black paint. It's used primarily for uh, calligraphy and whatnot. Native Americans use it for pictography. Um, if you ever seen the old, I mean, animal, deer, bear wall writings in caves and walls and whatnot, or the symbols and writings on Native American teepees and huts or whatnot. Bone black back in the late 1700s, early 1800s, um, due to the almost near mass extermination of the North American buffalo. The only thing that was not used for bones for buffalo at that time was his skull. Everything else was used. Um, so you had a countryside littered with buffalo bones to where it became a commodity to reduce the bones themselves to ash. And by doing it at, I forgot what temperature, uh, heavy incinerated, heavy incineration, it will produce its own black paint-like substance. Interesting thing about bone black itself is, and I didn't notice at the time, is bone black produces its own binding agent. Um, Bone black by itself does look like powdered up charcoal, but during the making process, there is a derivative that comes out of it called discovered. I forgot his name, but I think it's Conrad Dipple, but uh, it was called Dipple's oil, and that becomes the adhesive. So you can see, or sort of makes sense to how the bone black was able to appear on our walls, because the adhesive, like all paint, it has to have an adhesive to it, and so that was interesting. That portion of it, um, and then there's a Native American angle of bone black, bone char, and then the upside down man. It was,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
was
very,
just
very, very fascinating. Um, Also, with your case, so we talked about a couple of different theories with poltergeist, such as the survival hypothesis. Over in the UK, they still use the term poltergeist in between a discarnate entity and recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis. In your case, you certainly had some phenomena that's common with poltergeist cases, such as the spontaneous fires, the levitation, the items
yeah.
materializing, dematerializing. But in your particular case, the activity didn't really seem to focus around you or Tina per se, did it?
No, and you bring up a very interesting point, and this is what makes the Bothell case a phenomena or interesting in the sense of there were a lot of the activity that we had. Yeah, we had activity when we were not home. The house was empty.
Exactly. Yeah.
We had attacks. I've had attacks out and abroad. There were times when me and Tina were attacked in two different places at once. Friends have had things follow them. Um, a lot of times we were responding to activity. If you read my book, I had set up a near state-of-the-art home monitoring security alert system to where I would get notifications if a pin drop and responding to motion detected, sound detected, and was able to log in from my office, which is 30 minutes south of where I live, and see the melee after the fact, and then rush home, and then there'd be the wall writing. Keep in mind, these wall writings, I talked to a lot of painters from all walks of life, all type of carpenters, you name it, multiple years of experience, and they said it would take them days, if not weeks, to do some of that stuff with paint. And we have had it done in minutes. I mean, of how fast it would appear, you know. You leave and go to the corner store and come back, and that's written all over your wall, dry, not a wet residue anywhere. But you're right. It points in the opposite direction of an agent of, oh no, the activity needs to be happening around Quincetina. It points in the opposite direction of RSPK. Um, but it does point to the direction of some level of intelligence, some level of planning, manipulation. I mean, to start a fire, I have to believe they waited for me to get in the shower for the fire to erupt, and other whatnots. Moving Bibles from one room to the other. It was like musical chair or cat chasing his tail. And like they got a good laugh out of seeing me and Tina, search for things and whatnot. So, um, and then the housewarming party on July, I believe it was June or July of 2012, where 12 of my friends witnessed phenomena that we witnessed. My friends saw objects levitate and fly. These are phenomena usually reserved only for the people who live in the home, not let alone their friends visiting. But they saw it with their own eyes. whatever these were, they were not shy to outsiders per se.
Yeah, which paranormal investigators love when there's independent witnesses as well that are not associated to the homeowners.
Yeah,
So I mean that was another good thing. And like you said, because you had done so much research on the paranormal when the first activity kind of broke out, you knew enough to keep track of when things were happening and what was happening, which like you said, the investigators would appreciate that.
oh,
Not really surprised to hear that the Ghost Adventures didn't go so well. Obviously, I call that stuff paratainment because it's not even
yeah.
real. It's just more like paranormal entertainment kind of thing. And the other thing I like about when Don Phillips and the guys from the UK caught your EVPs, they weren't using like what people are using today, which is the applications on the phone. Um,
No, no.
they were using actual like recording equipment, which is nice because I don't trust those apps. And you come from an IT background. I mean, um, we've got an audio engineer with Paranormal Phenomena Research Investigation that has been kind of looking at these apps, and um, you know, it, those apps can tell like, they can use like your compass and tell your direction and things like that. So I have
Yeah.
a feeling that those apps are set up for entertainment purposes. They can monitor what you're doing and kind of feed you words and things like that to kind of make it feel like you're getting hits or EVPs and
Oh
things
yeah, they
like
give you
that.
false positives and um yeah, but it's comical. You're right. Oh, I'm gonna go download a ghost app off the Apple Store. It doesn't make no sense. But no,
Yeah.
bona fide teams know. I mean, if and I didn't know, but it was good to see, like I said, Dawn and Steve and Nick and others. Um, there was an object was thrown one day that was Steve and Dawn in the home, and the object got thrown in the hallway. We're all downstairs. It made a loud bang. It made a loud bang. Um, but Steve and them had it was some sort of equipment they had running 24/7 listening device. So we were able to capture the loud bang, and upon review, I don't know what software they put it through, but they put it through some sort of analyzing software that broke the sound down to decibel level. And they measured it, and it's in the documentary, the reenactment of it. It's pretty cool. But Steve then took the audio to Barry Fitzgerald out of the UK, who put it to some more listening equipment. And while they were in the home, Stephen they picked up the object with their hand and threw it several times themselves just to reduplicate the noise.
Yep.
And they were able to determine the noise or the phantom noise, if you will, because nobody was up there when it happened. But the noise that happened on its own had its own decibel signature that
Yep.
upon duplication could not be reinvented.
I'm glad you brought that up because we did cover that off in this course about how poltergeist raps or knocks when recorded and run
Yeah,
through audio software have a different acoustic than if you were to
yeah,
do the same thing. So I'm
yeah,
glad that and that kind of I also like the fact that you said they tried to replicate that same noise because that's what we talked about as well in this course is
yeah,
while you're doing this investigation, try and do some studies and some replication. So in that case, you guys heard a bang, figured which object it was, tried to replicate it,
yeah,
recorded it, did some analyzation with the data, and turned out that it wasn't the acoustics of it was different, which is actually very common in poltergeist or ghost kind of cases. So
yeah.
um, that's all really good because everything that I've been teaching over the last 4 weeks, you're showing, how investigators actually use that in the field.
Yeah, when they showed me that, and my mind was blown, and then it started making sense to me as to, I would hear in my ear my name called, and it sounded like Tina, but it sounded like Tina, but it don't 100% sound like Tina. You know what I mean? I mean, the
Yeah.
brain has a way of filling in the blanks, but who else can it be? Only Tina lives there. So I would respond to Tina, and she look at me like, "What do you want?" I'm like, "Didn't you call me?" And so that was replicated, meaning what I heard. was replicated. So there's a mimicking. I mean, I've read several poltergeists after this ordeal of theories around the ghost mimicking or poltergeist mimicking sound, where they can mimic a noise, mimic a voice, and what's to stop them from mimicking an object being thrown? Keep in mind, I say in my book, there were times where um, Tina heard the sound of a piano crashing. And everybody know what sound a piano crashing sounds like. Thunderous, it has a distinct sound. Nothing else on earth has a sound like a piano crashing. And we don't have a piano, let alone one crashing,
Yeah,
but it sounds like it been
which is
dropped from a,
interesting you say that too, because in haunting cases with an intelligent entity, they seem to like to replicate human
yeah,
behavior, human sounds, such as like what you just described. Whereas in a poltergeist case, if you hear something smash, like poltergeist cases in the recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis, normally if you hear something smash in one of those cases, it's because something actually did smash.
yeah.
So that's really interesting. So, after you moved out of the Bothell house, what did you experience for activity, after that? Do you think anything followed you, or do you think, it was kind of just something to do with that location?
Oh, I was definitely followed that. Once again, day one, once again, these things were never shy. Day one, upon moving to my second place of residence, the water puddle phenomenon. That only happened once in the Bothell house of the strange water appearances. Um, but on day one of living elsewhere, I was about to go to work, but I was checking work email at my computer desk, and I start hearing this tap, 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 tap. Like a leaky faucet in your sink. This drives you crazy, but it wouldn't go away. And then finally, I just like broke away from my emails and I started looking around, like, what's that noise? And I walked past my kitchen table, and there's water, not all over it, but a sizable water puddle on my kitchen table. And I look up and there's water dripping from the ceiling. Now, I had moved from a house that you saw in the Bothell house to a two-bedroom apartment and a dwelling unit. So I have neighbors now. And I'm on the first floor and I have people who live above me. So naturally, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, my first day in this new place, and I got neighbors with a leaky roof or whatever.
Yep.
Um, I went up there, knocked on their door. No answer. It's about 5 a.m. in the morning. But I knew what it was, but I wanted to go through the due diligence of checking off boxes. Okay. Because it was just too coincidental for me. But I called the building maintenance, and normally they respond within hours, but a water coming through your roof, they got to respond right away. So they responded within 10 minutes tops, building guy, two of them, and the water's still dripping. And I'm so glad the water's still dripping because I want them to see what I see, and I want them to go through their list of deducing what this is. And they did. They're like, whoa, that's water. But the first thing he says is he put his finger up there where the water was coming from. And he said, the surface is dry. And then I just kind of, smirked and looked away. So then they go upstairs, and the neighbors upstairs, who must be awake at that time, finally let them in. There's no leaking. There's no spilt over aquarium. There's nothing. There's no pipes between the floors. He said, and they knew that all of myself. There's no pipe between the floors. That's a building code violation. There's no pipes between the floors. And they could not understand where the water was coming from. And then maybe 20 minutes in, the water just stopped dripping. Just stopped. Everybody looked on it. It stopped on its own. And sort of like the fire department when they came to the poster fire, which was out by the time they arrived, there's really nothing else they can do now that the water has stopped. But if it stopped, okay, we're all happy. If it happens again, let us know. And that never happened again. Okay.
Interesting. Yeah, I was gonna say the next time they'd probably have to cut the drywall above, like where the water was coming from, to take a look,
Well, they
start
bought he bought
digging
yeah, he
into it.
bought some sort of water tracing device, and they put that to use, but it just kept hitting dead end. It's like, well, there's no water source. And so I emailed the building manager a few days after because I wanted to capture the report. Every visit to your house they have to give you a report, and I wanted that report because I was still communicating with Steve and Nick, Kyle, and those guys. And the lady wrote in the report, or the mechanic wrote in the report, we could not find water source because even if a water stops, they will come back and do post investigations or whatever to see what root cause was. But um, They couldn't find nothing, and then they gave me the report as to no root cause. But I had water puddle phenomenon in the Bothell house, so I was familiar with that. But to answer your question once again, there were other episodes. Nothing as violent as the Bothell house, but I tell people things that still happen even to this day. I experience um, is the mattress indentations, who I believe you was talking about Ezra Cox's story, had experience of the mattress indentations, uh, the tugging of my feet while sleeping, the yanking of my pillow or pillowcase. I'm a guy who sleeps with the covers over him, so sometimes occasionally my covers will get pulled down, sometimes yanked down. So those are still happening within weeks and months and years after moving out of the Bothell house. Being poked and prodded, rib cage, kidney, that gets nerve-wracking. And the one that Nikki Novell, to her credit, experienced herself and documented and talked about was the pulsation coming from the mattress. You put your hand down, and there's a pulsation like a heartbeat coming from within the mattress. Those things still happen, albeit less frequent now.
That's really interesting. I've read other poltergeist cases where they felt the same thing, but it's coming from the wall where the knocks or the raps are coming from. They'll report the same feeling, that kind of pulsation
Yeah.
feeling. Yeah, really
Oh,
interesting.
it blew Nikki's mind when she felt it with her own hand, and I was surprised that it had lasted that long because they had 24 access to my house. By then, they were living in the home with me, but I was upstairs taking a nap, and they were downstairs in their own investigation. And as soon as I started feeling the heartbeats from underneath me, I darted up and called them to my room. But I thought in my mind, oh, they're going to be gone by now. They're going to be, but um, it was still there when she got there. She put her hand down and it was still there. Um,
Interesting. Have you, my last question before I see if Joe's got any questions there. Have you talked to anyone that's lived at the Bothell house since you moved out and
I've not
see?
talked to the current occupants. I made a rule, and so far I'm good at keeping it of not purposely um, going over there asking them. It was a husband and wife who moved in after I moved out. By that I mean they moved in July of 2016. I moved out in May of 2016. But it's still occupied by the same. It has not changed ownership. The homeowner, which I was living under, the landlord, he put the house up for sale summer of 2016. It still has the same husband and wife. I've not gone by there. I've not heard anything. What's happening, but um, so yeah, I don't know.
Interesting. Interesting. All right. Joe, I'll unmute you. Do you have any questions for Keith? I know Joe said that he was telling me he's heard you on a couple podcasts there before, so
Ah, okay.
might have some questions for you there.
Is he on mute? Oh, there he goes. There he goes.
Hi, Keith.
Hi, Joe. How you doing?
Good, buddy. First of all, I want to thank you for taking the time to speak to us. Very interesting. I did hear your case once or twice before, and very intrigued by it. Sure, I don't know what to make of it. Just wondering if did you ever find out anything about the house, the land the house was on? Did you ever uh, do any investigating whether it was on, I don't know, like an old grave site or anything like that, or
Well, we did a thorough investigation of both the land and the previous tenants. I'll tell you, you might have heard this through the podcast before. Um, there was a family who lived in the home 2008, 2009, a husband and wife, or I should say wife and husband and three kids, who did have activity. Once again,
okay.
which similar to ours, although they stayed in the house less than a year. Um, I found them just through lucky research and contacted her. Um, and they had activity that I just explained today. Um, I, started looking deeper into, Bothell itself spending hours in the county records office in Snohomish County, which is where Bothell is located. Uh, we did find that the house, there was a cabin in the exact area uh, where the Bothell house is today. And that's covered in the documentary. Uh, the
Okay.
trail grew cold as to, I know who lived in the cabin, who owned it. I've not been able to catch up to any uh, a family or ancestors or whatnot, because this was back in the 50s and 60s. This cabin was, but it was the only house on that lot at the time. Very prestigious family in Bothell, I might add. But the trail grew cold. I'm always wondering if some of the kid toys that we found belonged to them, because I always tell people we were finding kid toys that were just severely dated. These were not in modern time kid toys that were always popping up out of nowhere and out in the open in our house. Um, Nothing as far as burial, even though, like I said, the wall writing suggests um, was had me leaning heavily in that category, but um, that house never would have been built had they found Native American burial things on it. In Washington, they have strict laws about where you could build. If they would have found anything so much as a shoe, um, that neighborhood would have never been allowed to be built upon. Um, but keep in mind the records for I say that knowing that Bothell or the state of Washington didn't really start keeping good records of the area to early 1900s. So everything before
Okay.
that is anybody's guess. But going back to the smallpox outbreak, there was a large smallpox outbreak that decimated a lot of the American tribes in and around Bothell, let alone the state of Washington, let alone the Pacific Northwest, let alone the West Coast. Um, and then the
Right.
upside down man symbol is only, like I said, it's not, they don't draw that symbol for every death that Native Americans encounter. It's drawn specifically um, to imply that murder or death by disease. So make of that what you will. Um, so it was just interesting. Steve Mara did come to the conclusion, and I think he's right, that this is a landlocked phenomena, that the phenomena is somehow related to the land. Now, there's an asterisk to that, only in the sense of Rhonda, which is the previous tenant I told you about who lived there in 2008, 2009. And you might appreciate this, Elliot. She did, and I was able to verify through 911 records, said that she was raped in the home by a home intruder. She never gave his name, and she said she never pressed charges, which makes me think she knew her assailant. But I did find through documentation through 911 records that she was raped in the home. And this was 2008, 2009. Um, so the house had a dark history. It had a violent
Yeah,
history.
yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Um, Rhonda, unfortunately, she had tried to commit suicide in the home 4 to 5 times. I was able to find the documentation of that through Freedom of Information Act. Um, and she always blamed the house. Her suicidal, depression, alcoholism, she blamed it on the house. Her son saw shadowy figures. Um, Sadly but true, she successfully did commit suicide of September of 2016. Not in Washington, but in Montana. She walked in front of a moving train in
Jeez.
broad daylight. So there is a death associated, in my opinion, with the house. Of what make of it what you will. Um, it's just too coincidental, too uncanny, weird timing. I was going how I found out. We had maintained a friendship from afar. She had moved. Her family had moved from Bothell to Yakima, Washington, when I contacted her. Her husband and them were just getting back together. They broke up in that house, like me and Tina. But she never fully recovered. She always blamed that house. I was going to her summer or fall of 2016 to tell her to get some sort of, like, it was a relief for me what Steve and Mara and others had found about the house. And I was going to tell her, hey, let's put the past behind you. It wasn't you, it wasn't me. They found some stuff. And if that gives you some sort of solace, that'll be good. It gave me solace. But unfortunately, I was too late. Her Facebook wall she had just passed away. Her son had wrote a war memorial on her wall. Yeah, I found the newspaper articles, and they spoke to the and he said, yeah, there was a woman walking on the tracks. He could see her. I forgot how many miles he saw her, but by the time they hit the brakes, the train couldn't still stop. They blew the horn. She would not move, but he said he'll never forget that her face. He said she looked, she was at peace, and she just let the train run her down. And I was just like, wow. But so make of that what you will. Just sad.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
The only other quick question I had is just a thought about the neighbors around the house. Did anybody else experience any kind of paranormal activity in their own homes?
Well, yeah, the neighbors, well, two things. The neighbors, upon seeing paranormal vans and teams show up at our house, did volunteer some information of their pets acting weird. It started maybe
Okay.
they started connecting the dots as to why the dogs and cats behave weirdly in their own home. One neighbor said that his dogs refused to go into rooms that were closest to our house. Um, he thought that was weird. He also thought it was weird, and I'm sort of glad they never did. But the pets seem to purposely avoid coming on our lawn when walking the dogs or whatever. Um, so they thought that was weird. I can also tell you another true story. A friend of mine who lives a block and a half away from me still does to this day. And this is me. I don't live in a house anymore. He emails me. I'm at work, and he says he had to go home from his job because his security alarm was going off. His Comcast security system. So he went home to deal with that. And when he got home, there was a police car in his driveway responded to the same thing. The cop got there before he did, but he let the cop know it's a false positive, whatever. And the cop's like, "Is everything okay?" He's like, "Yeah, alarm must have tripped itself or whatever. Nothing. There's no burglar, whatever." And the cop volunteered this information. The cop said, "In the neighborhood I live in, it's called the Timbers neighborhood in Bothell, the Timbers." And the cop volunteered this information. Said, "This neighborhood, out of all neighborhoods in Bothell, we get more false positives of security system alarms going off. It's the most
Wow.
we respond to this neighborhood, and have been for a while." Um, so he made a point to tell me that. I thought that was weird. Steve Mera and others, paranormal teams, if you watch the documentary, Dawn did conduct some EVP sessions in the woods in the creek behind the home, and was able to get some good EVPs from the creek. I don't say it's a river, but it's a creek. It's only flowing water during the winter months, but um, he was able to go down there. It's about maybe 100 yards trenched going down there, but he spent about an hour and a half down there. He came back with some awesome EVPs, you know, um, and then brought that back up for review. Um, and then just a lot of other stuff. I mean, you don't know. I mean, I could tell you about the car instances with my car, the alarms going off. I'm talking about the horn, the lights, waking up and all the car doors are open, the trunk is open, no content, nothing been removed. Neighbors waking me and Tina up because the cars are all the doors are open, the sirens are going off. Um, there's a lot of stuff. I think that there is some. I think they're all around that neighborhood. Like Steve Merritt's theory is the low level activity can easily go unnoticed. And if you don't challenge it the way I did, it'll probably stay that way. Low level activity. I mean, how many people go back into a room if the lights are off and on, and start putting up cameras soon after? That was me. That's what got me in trouble. Was I knew I had to leave the light on or leave it off when I left, and I come back, the light's off. If I'd left probably well enough alone, it probably would have been, okay, Keith's not going to play with us, so we're not going to play with him. But that's all it takes for them to get wounded up is you take an interest in what it is they're doing.
Well, and that's interesting because tonight we talked about, trying to encourage the families to not focus on the activity and,
Yeah,
try and go about your activity, your daily routine and
yeah,
not feed into it basically.
yeah. There's some truth there. I can vouch for that, being that they seem to get stronger with their attitude, with your focus and level or whatnot. And you throw in fear, but it's hard. But it's easier said than done, though. It's easier said than done of trying to ignore. I mean, if a plant goes flying across your room, you know, you got to clean it up.
Absolutely.
I tend to
Yeah,
have
for
a
sure.
tendency to yell at them and tell them to stop, but that's only mean they're going to do it again.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah.
Awesome. Any other questions, Joe?
No, I was just wondering. Keith said you had some investigators in. Did anybody ever try to do like a blessing or a saging of the home? Was there any attempts to try and? You said that you did tell them to go toward the light and things like that. But I was just wondering if
I
anything
can tell
else was
you
done.
the ghost hunters did. That seems to be their go-to is the saging. I have mixed opinions about the benefits of saging. Um, the parapsychologists never did saging. Um,
Right.
the saging in our home seemed to escalate the activity. Um, the first team, No Bull Paranormal, who came to our 911 call spring of 2014 smudge, but this so that brought about the Bible catching fire the next day when they left, uh, when she saged. And then one time they took my sage stick because I started buying sage sticks myself, and they started writing on the wall with my sage stick. So I got discouraged about that. Um, we had shamans visit the home. The shamans didn't sage though; they did other things. Like I said, I got a sense that the bona fide teams, um, knew going in, saging doesn't solve everything, and you want to know first what you're dealing with before you just run to saging. Of course, Zach Baggins and them did saging, but that's Zach Baggins. But so,
Yeah.
so it can have adverse effects. How about that? It can. Not every case can bring about the positive outcome. Like I say, saging for us brought about more adverse effects than positive effects. Case in point, once we started saging or got saging involved, that's when the spontaneous fires start happening. You know,
Wow.
like, oh
Yeah,
my
I've seen
goodness.
cases too where the saging it might quell things around the house for a day or two, but then it usually comes back with a vengeance.
Yeah, yeah, they come back with a vengeance and ratchet up the level. Um, the priests that came in never smudged, but they used oil and ointments and water. And stuff like that. And like I said, it'll quiet down for 48 hours, 72 hours. But when they come back, man, they make up for lost time. Yeah.
Oh,
Interesting.
well, thanks again, Keith. I appreciate your time and very interesting and well spoken individual.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having and listening. And I hope you find Dawn and Steve's documentary, Demons in Seattle Uncovered. It's a pretty good 1 hour and a half of good stuff.
I'll check it out for sure. Thank you.
All right, Keith, thank you for joining us there. I know you got tied up with court there last week and the week before, but
Yeah.
no, I'm glad you were able to make it. And I'm just going to do the course conclusion. So if you want to stick around, you can, but certainly don't have to. I'm just going to tell them about the final exam and all that stuff. But I
Okay,
appreciate
I get
you
out of here.
coming
I'm
on.
in my downtown office. I'm gonna go get in this traffic and head home and get some dinner.
All right, buddy. Sounds good. You have yourself a good night.
All right, y'all be safe. Thank you very much.
All
Take
right,
care.
take care. All right, that was great.